We've all been there. You gave him your time, your trust, your loyalty, maybe even a part of your future. And what did he do? He shattered it. He left you confused, questioning yourself, and wondering what you did wrong. But here's the truth. You didn't lose him. He lost you. And while you were picking up the pieces of your broken heart, he walked away with his ego intact. Not anymore. This isn't about revenge. This is about reclaiming your power, because the most powerful response to someone who underestimates you is not screaming, chasing, or begging. It's becoming a version of yourself so strong, so magnetic, and so unbothered that his ego can't handle your glow up. He shattered your heart? Good. Now you shatter his illusion that he could break you and walk away without consequence. When someone shatters your heart, it's easy to believe that the story ends there. With the pain, the betrayal, the disappointment, it feels like everything you built emotionally, every dream you wove with that person, just crumbled in front of you. But what if that moment, the one that felt like your breaking point, was actually your becoming point? What if the pain wasn't the end, but the beginning of something entirely new, something stronger, wiser, and more powerful? Heartbreak is a strange kind of mirror. It doesn't just show you who they were, it shows you who you are. Not who you are at your best necessarily, but who you are when you're raw, when you're stripped of illusion, caught off guard, vulnerable. And as agonizing as that is, it's also honest. It forces you to meet yourself in a way you never had to when things were going smoothly. It demands self-reflection, and through that comes transformation. See, a lot of people stay stuck in the loop of heartbreak because they wait for closure, wait for the apology, wait for the moment he finally realizes what he lost. But that's not growth. That's still giving him control of your story. True healing begins when you decide to no longer let him hold the pen. You flip the script. You stop making the heartbreak about him and start making the healing about you. You don't need his remorse to rise. You don't need his regret to reclaim your worth. The moment you realize your value was never diminished by his inability to see it, that's when things begin to shift. Because you're no longer operating from a place of proving something to him. You're operating from a place of returning to yourself. And that's where the power is. That's where the evolution begins. When you stop waiting to feel better and start doing better. When you stop saying, he hurt me, and start asking, what can I build now from this pain? Because you can either let heartbreak harden you, or you can let it refine you. You can either sit in the ashes, or you can rise from them. Think about it, most of the strongest people you know didn't get that way by coasting through life. They got that way because something broke them open. And instead of staying broken, they got to work. Not to win someone back, not to prove a point, but because they finally saw how much more they deserved, because they realized that loving someone else had distracted them from loving themselves. This is your moment to rebuild, not into the same version of you that got hurt, but into someone wiser, more grounded, someone with higher standards, a stronger sense of boundaries, a clearer understanding of what real love looks like and what it doesn't. He may have shattered your heart, but that doesn't get to be the headline of your life. What matters more is what you do next. The heartbreak may not have been your choice, but how you rise from it absolutely is. Let this be the moment you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what can I make of this? Because when you stop defining yourself by the person who broke you and start defining yourself by how you rebuild, you take your power back. And in doing so, you become the kind of woman who doesn't just heal, you evolve. You don't just move on, you rise above. And that right there is something no man can ever take credit for. When someone hurts you deeply, especially someone you trusted and loved, your first instinct might be to make them feel what you felt. You want them to understand the pain, to regret the way they treated you, to see that walking away from you was a mistake. So you think, what can I say to make him feel this? What can I post? What can I do? How can I get under his skin the way he got under mine? That's a natural human reaction. We all want justice, especially in love. But here's the truth. Words rarely have the impact we think they will. Silence does. When you go silent, you remove their power. You stop giving them access to your emotions. And that, more than anything, disturbs someone who's used to having control. As long as you're reacting through anger, sadness, passive-aggressive texts, or dramatic Instagram stories, they still feel connected. They still know they matter to you. And some people, especially those with inflated egos, feed off that attention. Even your pain becomes an ego boost for them. But the second you stop talking, stop explaining, stop trying to show them how much they hurt you, that's when the ego starts to crumble. Because silence isn't passive, it's power, it's restraint, it's choosing not to engage, not because you don't have something to say, but because you finally realized they're not worth the emotional energy. Silence says you no longer get to affect me. And believe me, that unsettles people more than any clever message or emotional outburst ever could. There's this idea that closure comes from confrontation, from finally saying your piece and getting the apology you deserve. But real closure doesn't come from someone else's words. It comes from your decision to walk away without needing theirs. And nothing facilitates that decision more clearly than silence. It's a boundary, a firm line that says, I'm no longer available for this version of the story. When you stay silent, it's not about ghosting or playing games. It's about protecting your peace. It's about giving yourself the space to heal without reopening wounds every time they pop into your messages. It's about no longer being available to someone who is careless with your heart. Because if they didn't care enough to fight for you when it mattered, they don't get the privilege of lingering in your life now. Silence also shifts the dynamic. It creates curiosity. And for someone with a big ego, that curiosity becomes unbearable. Why isn't she reacting? Why isn't she reaching out? Has she moved on? These questions will haunt someone who's used to being the center of your emotional world. And ironically, it's not your attention that makes them reflect, it's your absence. People often need the echo of silence to finally hear themselves. But this isn't about revenge. This isn't about playing games or trying to make someone suffer. It's about reclaiming your dignity, about realizing that every time you respond emotionally, you hand them a piece of your power. Silence is you holding on to that power. It's not cold, it's clarity. It's not bitterness, it's boundaries. When you choose silence, you're telling yourself, my energy is too precious to waste proving my worth to someone who failed to see it. And that message, that quiet strength, it speaks volumes. You don't need to scream. You don't need to pose your pain. You just need to live so fully, so freely, and so unapologetically that your silence becomes the loudest thing they hear. Healing after heartbreak is not something that just happens with time. That's a myth we've been sold. That if you wait long enough, the pain will fade and you'll feel whole again. But time alone doesn't heal. What you do with that time is what makes the difference. Healing is active. It's a choice. It's a process that requires effort, intention, and commitment. You have to treat it like it's a full-time job, because if you don't, the pain lingers. It just buries itself deeper until it shows up in the next relationship, the next argument, the next trigger. You can't just hope you'll feel better. You have to work for better. And that work starts with facing the reality of what happened, not sugarcoating it, not minimizing it, and definitely not blaming yourself for someone else's choices. You have to sit with the pain, acknowledge it, and understand where it's coming from. Did it bruise your sense of worth? Did it awaken old insecurities? Did it make you question your ability to trust? Again, that's the real work. Digging into those questions and being brutally honest with yourself about the answers. Most people skip this step. They slap on a distraction. Maybe it's going out every weekend, jumping into a rebound, or numbing themselves with work or social media. And sure, those things might give you a temporary high, but they don't build real healing. They just delay it. If you really want to rise from what he did to you, you have to invest in yourself like never before. And not just externally. Not just with a new outfit or a gym routine. Though those things are great, you have to invest in your emotional growth, your self-awareness, your standards. And when you start showing up for yourself like that, something incredible happens. You stop seeing him as the one who broke you and start seeing him as the one who woke you. The pain becomes the thing that pushed you to evolve. And in that process, you create a version of yourself who's stronger, clearer, and more grounded than ever before. This kind of healing requires consistency. It's waking up and choosing not to text him, even when you miss him. It's going to therapy or journaling when your heart feels heavy. It's setting boundaries with people who bring up his name or romanticize what you had. It's making small choices every day that serve your future self, not your wounded self. And it's not linear. There will be days when it feels like you're slipping backward, but if you're doing the work, you're still moving forward. Eventually, you'll look back and realize something powerful. You're no longer healing to get over him. You're healing to become someone who wouldn't even choose him now. That shift is everything. Because now, you're not seeking closure or revenge or validation. You're simply becoming too elevated to be dragged down by what once hurt you. And when he sees you again or hears about you, he won't be met with the broken version he left behind. He'll see someone unrecognizable. Not because you changed to impress him, but because you evolved in his absence. And that's the real ego shatter. That's the moment he realizes he didn't just lose you, he lost the chance to grow with you. But by then you'll be far too busy building your life to care. After a heartbreak, especially one that hits deep, there's often this urge to show the world you're okay, even if you're not. Maybe you start posting curated photos where you look flawless, or you share cryptic quotes about self-worth, strength, or karma. Part of you hopes he sees it. You want him to wonder, to regret, to feel a fraction of what you felt. And in some way, it feels like power, like if you can just appear unbothered, you win. But that's the trap. When you try to prove you've moved on, you usually haven't. Healing isn't something you broadcast, it's something you build. And the loudest statement you can make isn't on social media, it's in how you live. Not the filtered version, but the real one. When you truly start healing, you're no longer thinking about whether he sees you or not. You're not crafting an image for anyone. You're doing things that feed your peace, not your ego. You're spending time with people who make you laugh, who remind you of your worth without needing to say a word. You're doing work that challenges you, making choices that align with the person you're becoming. You stop living to be seen, and you start living to feel full. Real strength is quiet. It doesn't need applause. It's not flashy or performative. It's found in the days when you choose not to engage in petty drama, when you unfollow or mute him, not to punish him, but to protect your energy. It's in the decision to stop checking if he's watched your story, to stop tailoring your life around his potential attention. Because the moment you stop living in response to him, you start living in alignment with yourself. One of the biggest mistakes people make after a breakup is thinking their glow-up has to be visible to the one who hurt them, that somehow, if he doesn't see it, it doesn't count. But true healing isn't about him seeing anything. It's about you finally seeing yourself clearly. It's about shedding the need to prove you're happy and actually being happy, even if no one claps for it, even if he never knows. Because healing isn't a performance, and when it becomes one, you're still giving him the lead role. There's a different kind of power that comes when you move in silence. When you stop explaining, justifying, or proving anything. You let your actions speak. You let your peace speak. You let your absence speak. That's when the shift happens. That's when you reclaim your narrative, not by rewriting the past, but by creating a future so rich, so deeply yours, that the past becomes irrelevant. And yes, he might hear about you. He might see you randomly one day, or scroll past a post you didn't even think twice about. And maybe he'll feel something, maybe he'll regret, but by that point, you won't care. Because your healing was never about making him feel something. It was about you feeling whole again. It was about finding joy that wasn't dependent on someone else seeing it or validating. So don't post your power, don't perform your peace, just live it. Fully, quietly, boldly. And trust that the life you're building, piece by piece, is the loudest message you'll ever need to send. There's something inside many of us that craves closure, a final conversation, a clean ending, an explanation that makes it all make sense. Especially when someone has hurt you, you want them to acknowledge it, to own their part, maybe even apologize. You want answers to questions that still echo in your mind late at night. And that's understandable, but the hard truth is waiting for closure from the person who broke you is like waiting for them to become someone they were never capable of being. And in doing that, you keep yourself tied to them. You keep the wound open. The need for closure often disguises itself as a desire for peace, but what it really does is hold your healing hostage. It makes you think that until he gives you something, an apology, a reason, a proper goodbye, you can't move on. But that's not true. In fact, clinging to the idea of closure can quietly erode your dignity. It puts your emotional freedom in someone else's hands. It says, I can't be okay until you fix what you did. But what if he never does? What if he walks away like it meant nothing and never looks back? Are you going to wait forever for someone who already left? You don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing. You don't need to circle back to someone who already showed you they couldn't handle your heart. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away quietly, without a speech, without a final moment, without a breakdown or a breakthrough, because silence, when rooted in self-respect, is a complete sentence. It says, I'm done. Not because you don't have more to say, but because you finally know your peace matters more than being understood by someone who never tried to understand you in the first place. Closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. A decision to accept what you didn't get, to live without the apology, to stop chasing clarity from someone who thrives on confusion. The moment you stop needing closure from them is the moment you give closure to yourself. You say, this chapter ends here on my terms. Not because they fixed it, but because I chose to stop bleeding for someone who didn't care that I was hurting. And what's more, when you leave with your dignity intact, you leave a mark. There's something unforgettable about someone who doesn't beg, doesn't plead, doesn't fight to be kept. When you walk away without dramatics, you rob them of the opportunity to feel in control. You deny them the final word. And for someone with a fragile ego, that's harder to swallow than any confrontation ever could be. But this isn't about revenge. It's not about making them suffer in your silence. It's about you stepping into a version of yourself that no longer revolves around what he did or didn't do. It's about taking the energy you would have spent crafting the perfect message or rehashing every detail and using it to build a life you're proud of. A life where you are the closure. You are the final chapter. And maybe one day he'll wonder why you never reached out, why you never tried to get the last word, why you disappeared without explanation, but by then it won't matter, because you'll be too far gone. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, not bitter, not broken, just completely uninterested in reopening doors you've already walked through and locked behind you. There's a moment in every heartbreak where you start to question yourself more than you question the person who hurt you. You think, if I was good enough, why didn't he stay? Why didn't he fight for me? Why did he treat me like I was disposable? And those thoughts are dangerous, not because they're dramatic, but because they're convincing. They sneak in quietly and start to erode your sense of worth. Suddenly, his inability to love you properly becomes evidence in your mind that you were somehow not enough, that you were lacking. But let's stop right there. His failure to love you isn't a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of his limitation. Your worth isn't a negotiation. It's not dependent on someone recognizing it, respecting it, or responding to it. You were worthy before he met you. You were worthy while he was in your life. And you're still worthy now that he's gone. What changed wasn't your value, it was your awareness of what you deserve. And that shift is powerful. When someone can't see your value, it doesn't mean it's not there. Think of it this way. Not everyone knows how to handle real depth. Some people only know how to hold shallow things. They want love that's easy, attention that's cheap, and affection that doesn't challenge them to grow. So when they come across someone who brings more love, more depth, more expectation, they don't know what to do with it. It overwhelms them, it exposes their emotional immaturity, and instead of rising to meet it, they retreat. So no, he didn't leave because you were too much. He left because he couldn't meet you at your level. And deep down, he probably knows it. That's where the ego comes in. His ego wants to believe he had the upper hand, that he walked away on his terms, that you were somehow the one who fell short. But reality always catches up. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually he'll see you thriving, grounded, more confident than he ever remembered. And he'll realize he didn't just lose a good thing, he lost the opportunity to rise alongside someone who would have loved him deeply had he been ready for it. But by then, you won't be looking for him to get it. You won't need the validation, because when you truly step into your worth, you stop waiting for someone else to affirm it. You affirm it every day by how you treat yourself, by the boundaries you set, by the energy you protect, by the standards you refuse to lower. And that self-respect, that's what really shakes a man's ego. Not because you are trying to, but because he knows he didn't break you. He knows that the version of you he hurt didn't crumble, didn't stay stuck, didn't stay available to him. You see, the most stunning plot twist isn't becoming someone else to get back at him. It's becoming so undeniably yourself that he wouldn't even know how to approach you now. You don't need to become colder, harder, or emotionally unavailable to prove anything. You just need to become more of who you truly are. The kind of woman who's not just healed, but elevated, who's not just moving on, but moving up. And that realization, that's what shatters the ego of someone who thought you'd never rise without him. Because you didn't just rise, you became someone he's no longer qualified to reach. Heartbreak is never easy. It breaks you open in places you didn't even know existed. But here's the truth no one tells you when you're in the middle of the pain. The version of you that rises after heartbreak can be the most powerful, beautiful, and unstoppable version yet. Not because of what he did, but because of what you chose to do next. You didn't crumble, you rebuilt. You didn't seek revenge, you reclaimed your worth. And while he might have shattered your heart, he didn't destroy you. He just revealed the parts of you that needed to be reawakened. So don't waste your energy trying to get his attention, his apology, or his regret. Let your silence speak. Let your growth speak. Let your happiness, your standards, and your peace be the loudest thing he never expected. You don't need to shatter his ego to prove a point. Just become someone so unbothered, so elevated, so full of self-respect that his ego breaks itself trying to understand how you moved on without needing anything from him. This isn't about him anymore. This is about you finally becoming the woman who doesn't just survive heartbreak, but turns it into the fuel for her evolution.